I think, I mean, from a legal side, the joy of coming to London is it's relatively simple, but there are slip-ups. So you do need to think about the person that you want to, and it might be you, and how you incentivise that person, how you give them the platform to be able to grow, and whether you're going to find someone in market, and James will come on to these sorts of things as well, whether you find someone in market or whether you have the contacts yourself. And be careful about employing consultants. From Ireland, you won't have immigration issues, which is great. That's another sort of slip-up depending on which jurisdiction you come from. But I think it's finding the right people and making sure that you give yourself a structure that allows you to grow.
Thank you. Stephen, would you like to add?
Yeah, of course. I mean, in many ways, if you're coming from Ireland, you have an advantage because you're close and there will be a greater understanding of what you're coming to. But if I sort of address the wider audience and apply it more generally, I tend to see the pitfalls as falling into two categories. The one is the cultural pitfall, and the other, being an accountant, are the technical and tax pitfalls. If I take the cultural ones, there's a temptation because we all, throughout the world, we all seem to speak the same language, English. We speak it, you speak it, wherever you come from, incredibly well. And you come to Britain, and you therefore understand us, and you believe you understand us, except perhaps you don't. And it's very easy to get tripped up. It's very easy, for example, when you're visiting customers, to hear them say, very interesting, yeah, I'll get back to you on that. And you actually think that means very interesting, they'll get back to you on that. They're busy for the next week or two, but you'll get to hear from them in 2 weeks' time. You won't. Very interesting doesn't mean very interesting. I work a lot with German clients, and the German will put forward a proposition. You know, if you would vorschlagen 1, 2, 3, I would suggest 1, 2, 3. And the Englishman says, Hans, I like the concept. I think we can work with that. Perhaps, though, we could achieve the same objective by using a somewhat different methodology. And Hans says to me, heißt das ja? And I say, no, it's not yes. That's 9. No. The Englishman doesn't say no. He doesn't like to say no. So you need to crack the code. And we were called perfidious Albion. People thought that we said one thing and did another. It's a misunderstanding. We don't like to offend, and you can very easily misunderstand. You can use the wrong... you can inadvertently just make mistakes by using your own language. Now, Audi seem to have done it very successfully, and I don't understand it. They say Vorsprung durch Technik, and everyone thinks that's wonderful. But the German rail system came over here, and they referred to themselves as Die Bahn, the train. D-I-E, die. Not a good way to introduce a train. Die, train. You've got to be careful. So cultural is one thing, and the other side is the accounting and tax. Very often I find that people come over here and there's a degree of naivety, and they're almost more naive than they would be in their own country. They see us as a nation of gentlemen, and I did once have a German who was came over here, who was a refugee from the German tax system, and he was coming here because we have such wonderful gentlemen and the tax authorities and everything. It's not quite like that. I mean, we're no worse than anybody else, I'm sure, but be careful. Don't think that you can opt out of the English tax system because you haven't got a permanent establishment, because I've decided I'm not going to have a permanent establishment. Ain't that easy. Don't assume that you can opt out of PAYE because all my employees have got contracts back home and we deduct tax back home, so we don't need to do it. Don't be, in that sense, naive. Take advice. And if you do that, then perhaps we can talk a bit about the opportunities, which are great. But you do your research and perhaps get English people or UK people with UK experience to help you with all of that.
Thank you, Steve. Any thoughts on, you know, the obvious things like property and finding the right talent? So maybe we could bring you in, James?
I think, and from your perspective, that as the gentleman said, it's probably slightly easier coming from Ireland than maybe some of the decisions that other people in the room are going to make. From a people perspective, there is as well two sides to this. It's a cultural thing, and it's a contact network thing. And we quite often talk to international clients about who are determined to bring somebody over from their headquarters. Now, that can work, absolutely. If you're trying to replicate a culture, and that's what you want, and that's your roadmap, that works. I was talking to an American client last week who was completely and utterly against doing that because they recognised that in order to be successful in this market, they wanted to create a completely standalone European culture. And so therefore they were completely anti-bringing somebody over, leading them very much towards the path of hiring somebody local, because we have a very different cultural market here. And I think from a network and a contact perspective, that can't be underestimated as well. I think we've seen a number of organisations in our industry which grows very quickly, huge amounts of investment in the digital technology space. You can have two companies really looking neck and neck from a technology capability perspective, and company A absolutely nails it and gets somebody in the market that everybody kind of looks up and says, wow, that person's gone to join company A. That's an interest. They're going to bring talent with them. That company flourishes. The other organisation, same capabilities from a technology platform perspective. They hire the wrong person, and actually you can lose 6-12 months in a market where you can't afford to lose 6 or 12 months. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, really.
Thank you, James. Are we getting defogging the issue at all for you here, Anne? Is there any specific things that you were worried about?
Well, you just mentioned there about networking being very important, and you could be swamped with the amount of associations and networks in London.
Yeah.
So can you give any guidelines on really good ones for a business startup to get involved with?
I mean, I think it depends entirely on what your business is doing. There are... In our industry, in the technology space, and apologies if I polarise anyone who isn't in that space, I'll try and give a couple of answers. But there are a couple of very good networking events in digital technology and centred around the Tech City hub. The Three Beards offer a very, very good... They have 4 different networking events that they run weekly, monthly, quarterly, and they attract very good people from all different sort of parts of the industry, investors, entrepreneurs, people that will help, like us, provide services to those organisations. But I did find there's a very good website as well called meetup.com. If you have a look at meetup.com, I think regardless of your space, it might be slightly focused towards tech, but have a look at that and you can search for where you are and what sort of meetup that you want to go along to. And it somewhat tries to demystify the huge number of networking events you can do, because you could be doing something every single night.
Yeah.
So it is a challenge.
Yeah.
These folks at London and Partners as well have very good ideas and introductions on networking.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Chairman, I would just say network where your customers and potential customers are, not where your competitors are.
Stephen, perhaps just a quick word on property, because ultimately you've registered the business, opened a bank account, you need somewhere to trade out of. What's your advice on that for a burgeoning business like Anne's?
Well, you have 2 options, obviously. The first one being the easy one, taking serviced offices, and you can pick up 1, 2, 10 desks very, very quickly indeed, within a week perhaps of arriving in the UK. Be careful with the cost, because it can vary from £300 per desk per month up to £1,000 per desk per month, so do your research. If you're looking for something a little more permanent, then it's the timing issue. Commercial property in the UK, things take time. Unfortunately, the market is changing quite quickly on us at the moment. We're seeing rents beginning to rise quite dramatically in some sectors, particularly obviously Mayfair, St James's. But it's an awareness that it would take you at least 3 to 5 months, say, to acquire a conventional lease anywhere by the time you've undertaken the research, undertaken the negotiations and agreed the lease document itself. So be prepared for a little longer to take your time in making sure you get the right premises. London is full of little villages with lots of different marketplaces in it. Take the appropriate advice, listen to that advice.
Thank you, Stephen. So as you heard, one of the thorniest issues for people in the room, or the most common, I suppose, theme was around access to finance and raising finance, and what kind of business plan am I going to need to interest financiers to back me. So we've got a number of experts assembled here from the legal, corporate finance and venture capital perspective. But there is a chap who presented some very specific questions. I don't know if Hans van Dalen is in the room. Oh, indeed he is. Hans, you had a couple of questions which you might want to repeat, or I can remind you of them if you've forgotten.
Yes. What should we do? Yeah. We are a company from the Netherlands, small company, tech company, software company, and we are considering to move to London to find to get access to funding, actually. So the question is as simple as how do I do the first steps to get into investors, or to find investors, or to find any form of financing?
Thank you. Steve, Brian, do you want to have a crack at that?
Okay, just a bit of background. The sort of the sector you're in and the size of business at present?
We are 3 people and enterprise software.
Okay, so right, the UK financing market sort of breaks down into a number of quite distinct strata. So for large corporates, it's a very mature funding market. There's you know, a surplus of capital equity looking for a good home. It doesn't particularly help entrepreneurs, but that's the way of the world. For the faster growing and established businesses, there's a good appetite for investment, for taking that risk. But in the UK, as you get to the smaller end, you know, certainly startups through to early stage revenue, but pre-profit, there's a much smaller pool of appetite and investors. And it is perhaps somewhat bizarre that a lot of those quality business opportunities are funded by US venture capital that invests into the UK, and particularly into London, to sort of pick up that demand. So your chicken and egg is actually, as a small business with revenue but perhaps pre-profit or lacking a 3-year history of profit, you're also an overseas business. So you kind of, you know, you need to increase your chances of success by moving your activities to the UK. You certainly will need to be physically based in the UK if you were to secure investment. So there really isn't any professional investment into early stage businesses that are not UK domiciled, where the management and the decision makers are not UK domiciled. That is only something at the very large end of the deal spectrum. But in your first instance, there are extensive angel networks. They're not everyone's cup of tea. I personally, you know, do not push people into angel funding. Angels are great because it's their own money. They've got a much more liberal approach to making a decision. If they get your idea, they're quite happy to sort of come on board. The problem is that actually when things go well, or when things don't quite go so well, angels often become a bit more involved in the business than any other form of institutional investor might, to the point where actually they can almost try to take over the business by default because they've done it before, you haven't. So I have a nervousness about angel investors, but you know, there are lots of success stories of businesses that started out with angel finance. And there is a mature network in the UK. There's one outfit worth looking up on the internet called Investages.com, but it is effectively an angel club for businesses seeking that finance. Your own money is going to be important as well. So we do now live in an environment where institutional and third-party risk takers will take risk after you have taken your fair share of risk. So if you have assets, you know, you need to find a way of getting those into a security net for investors. So that's kind of your equity options. There are some nice tax breaks for investing in early stage businesses for individuals, particularly founder, director, shareholders and staff. And that can be a useful source of funding. The debt market is not particularly active in the UK, or anywhere for that matter, really. For small amounts of money. So unless you've got a specific asset in your balance sheet that you can leverage from, good quality receivables or some good IPR, it is unlikely that debt will play a part until you're much more established with a pretty robust EBIT. What was the nature of the business again? Because there are some grants available in the UK for startups.
Yeah, it's creating software, so enterprise software.
Enterprise software.
Enterprise software, okay. It's probably a long shot. The main thrust of the grants that are available to any business of any nationality looking to come to the UK focus on, it's assessed on how many jobs does it create and how much manufacturing opportunity within the UK does it create. So If you needed to set up your business, lots of plant that was made in Derby, then actually that would be a nice proposition, and lots of government support would be coming your way. For small businesses, that can be in any geography. For larger businesses, it's aimed at sort of some of the more depressed economic areas. I suspect with software, you probably would have quite a battle there, because as I say, it's aimed primarily at creating jobs and manufacturing. But I wouldn't rule it out. They're called Regional Growth Fund. The product is called the Regional Growth Fund. And again, it's worth researching online.
Okay, a couple of second parts to that question, which I think it's worth calling out, Hans, about particularly the financiers, whether it's the bank or the angel investor or the grant or incentive provider. What is the best format of the submission? What sort of
business plan.
the business plan. What do we need?
I suppose, we have a sort of a broad rule of thumb in the UK. It's called the Guildford test. Now, if you don't know the geography of London and its suburbs, that will mean nothing to you. But Guildford is a lovely, quaint, liberal town out in Surrey, which is about a 45-minute train journey into Waterloo, one of London's big terminals. So the Guildford test is this: if I'm an investor and I sit down in my first-class seat, I hope it's first-class seat, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I've got 45 minutes till I get off the train at Waterloo. Have I got your proposition or not? So in 45 minutes, 100 pages is far too much. 2 pages is clearly far too little. There is a balance, and actually, most business plans that are successful are concise and precise. And probably, 30 to 40 pages is more than enough when you consider quite a lot of that volume will be charts and graphs and lovely PowerPoint presentation point. It's not all text. And in fact, keep text as minimal as possible. Use bullet points, don't use long paragraphs. Don't make people start reading, long text. Get them moving around to the key points. So 30, 40 pages is more than enough, but give them what they want. So what is your proposition, and who are you? So the 2 key things for an investor are management, and product, or service. So I want to know who you are, why you've come up with this idea or this product. Have you done it before? Is this your second attempt? Did your first attempt fail or succeed? Are you a serial entrepreneur, or are you fresh out of school? I need to know who you are, why, and how, and who is your customer. And in that sense, you need to put some validation in there. So, there is no question that over a third of all business plans doing the circuit at the moment are plans for technology propositions because someone has found a way of doing something. I can, therefore, you will buy. In actual fact, no. Most of them are like, well, it's great that you can do that, but I don't see a market for it, so they don't get investment. And the simpler propositions that say, look, there's 1 million people a year that need this, they just can't get it anywhere, and I've stumbled across the recipe or the formula or the algorithm, and here it is, there's your winner. So again, not technology for technology's sake if it's in the IT space, but actually addressing an addressable market and an addressable need, and demonstrating that within the plan. That's probably the key things you need within that sort of 30, 40 pages.
Stephen, I was just going to bring in Andrew here, because I understand, Andrew, you do this sort of thing for a living, help find the evidence to support business plans. Is that fair?
We certainly do market research, qualitative and quantitative market research, that will gather together the facts that could be used within a business plan, yes.
And that's clearly the evidence that you talk to, Steve, when you describe what you're looking for.
I mean, there are degrees, so quite often, lots of good trade associations do publish good quality quarterly or monthly data of market size and who the big users are, where actually you can access that data and use it and source it and sort of say, look, this is actually Bloomberg's shrink-wrap software off-the-shelf sales, consumer sales analysis of the globe for the last 5 years, and you can see it's growing like this. And actually, that's good evidence, better than no evidence. I think only in very special circumstances would I think at that stage you would go to the expense of spending money on a real highbrow expert to validate your proposition. But actually the sort of support that you can get from sort of market research agencies for a very sensible cost can actually sometimes be the difference between not convincing me, the reader of your plan, that there is a market versus really wowing me over that we ought to crack on with this proposition. Sometimes it's, I just don't see the market, and yet it is there. Investors are most often wrong, but they have the checkbook and they can be very, very selective, so they don't need to get it right every time. As long as the checks they write are on balance the right checks, loads of other opportunities that would have been an equally or better opportunity, doesn't matter that they said no.
Thank you, Steve. Stephen, have you a perspective?
It's really just to amplify one or 2 points. Steve mentioned the Guildford test. Most equity investors receive hundreds of business plans. It's a bit like CVs that you receive in times of high unemployment, and you've got to be able to catch their attention quite quickly. And I fully agree that a relatively short, sort of 30, 40 pages, I would perhaps even go further and say that it's useful to have a 2-page executive summary with the key points, hitting the key angles which are really going to catch the attention of the potential investor. And a lot of success will come from establishing credibility. How do you establish credibility? As you said, Steve, management. Sometimes you can do it by means of association with success. If you can get perhaps on your board some non-executive directors, somebody with experience, if you've managed to impress 1 or 2 key people who've got a tremendous track record and they're interested and they've even taken a small investment, that's a great point. If you've got a finance man on board who's going to keep track of the money so that the equity financier knows he's not going to give you the money and it's going to be frittered away. And finally, it's some sort of evidence of success, tangible evidence of success. These business plans are littered with examples of companies going from £1,000 to 100 million in 3 years. If you can demonstrate that I have achieved X, this is what I've done. And if you ever watch Dragon's Den, I don't know to what extent you've seen it, it often comes through that, you get these enthusiastic entrepreneurs with this wonderful product, and they've been to Boots and Marks and Spencers and C&A's, and they say, well, so how many have you sold? 3. It doesn't work. So credibility, just that extra point.
Finance and access to finance was quite a common issue. I just wonder if I could open up to the floor, if there's anyone else who's got a question related to raising finance or business planning. Yes, the gentleman with the glasses.
Hello, my name is Muayyad Abbas. I'm from Jordan, the Middle East. We're a different group of companies, and we want to set up in the UK a base to basically cover some European markets. We're in mobile content. We're in multi-businesses. But the point is, what kind of legal structure, and this is a legal nature type of question, what kind of legal structures you would advise to start with, and what are the types of legal structures available currently in the UK, and what's the relationship between onshore, offshore, or subsidiaries being in the UK of companies based either in the Middle East or offshore jurisdictions, basically?
Perfect question for the lawyer. So at a headline level, you can have a branch of an overseas company. We have partnerships in different structures. But actually, if you've got an overseas company and you're looking to grow the business in the UK, you will almost certainly end up with a limited company here. So you would have a limited company here, and we have great flexibility in the UK. There's no need to have local directors. There's no minimum maximum share capital. So you have great flexibility through a UK limited company. And actually, just picking up on earlier themes, it also gives you flexibility to receive if you wanted finance here, you do have to bite the bullet and have the company, and that may well end up being the top company in those circumstances. But if you've got a Middle Eastern business and you're looking to grow, you would end up with a company that you would use as your base, as your platform to do business from London across Europe. If you then go into other European jurisdictions, you may well put people underneath that company. Onshore and offshore, we can talk for a long time on that, and I think you see in the market at the moment, I think that the general market perception is be less aggressive in tax structuring. What I would say, and we've got the tax advisors who might come on to that in a moment, is I'm a great believer in simplicity. You're here in the UK to grow the business. And actually, when you've got revenues of 60 million in Europe or 80 million in Europe, you may be looking at tax-efficient jurisdictions and where the IP should go. But actually, a company here gives you the platform to grow the business. And actually, tax rates here are coming down, and it's not an unattractive jurisdiction in its own right. So simplicity for me and a limited company gives you the platform to grow.
Very helpful, Mark. Did you want to add to the tax?
Just on the tax angle, it's perhaps just to remove a possible misunderstanding. You establish a UK limited company to handle your European operations. The assumption might be, therefore, that all of your profits will be subject to UK tax. But that may or may not be the case. The normal rule would be that a UK company is resident in the UK and pays UK tax. But the registration in the UK is a bit like a passport. You can get somebody who's a UK passport holder but who works elsewhere, and he'll be taxable elsewhere. It's not that gives you immunity. And so two things can happen. You could either find that the company is managed and controlled elsewhere, perhaps from your home territory, and therefore the UK limited, whilst registered here, it's in a sense a bit of a sort of it's not a reality in substance. It's actually controlled from overseas. In those cases, it could be the case that your overseas jurisdiction claims that it's taxable there, not here. And if there's an appropriate double tax treaty, the English will say, fine, non-resident, not managed and controlled here, and you'll be wholly taxed elsewhere. The other possibility is that if you have a UK limited which has operations elsewhere, then those other operations could become, even if not separately registered as limited companies, they could become branches effectively overseas, permanent establishments overseas, and part of the profits of the UK company would be taxed overseas. So there is a parallel set of issues, the legal structure of the limited and then the taxability. So finally, the best advice is get advice on the details of your individual circumstances and talk to somebody, preferably a lawyer or an accountant who understands such matters, and you'll get the detailed advice for your circumstances.
So I think
Can I have a follow-up question?
Please.
In terms of taxation, if you have a company making income in the UK and paying taxes in the UK, but it's fully 100% owned by the mother company.
No problem.
No problem in the legal entity. Is there any distribution tax on the repatriation of the profits?
No tax on distribution, no withholding tax, one of the great advantages of the UK.
Okay, so you pay tax on the income generated in the UK?
Corporation tax at a rate of 20% on the taxable income, not necessarily the accounting income, and any dividends are tax-free when they leave, and they'll be subject to taxation in your home territory, subject to the individual rules there.
Okay, and it is a real advantage of this economy.
Yes. So you said it's 20% tax bracket. That's the
20%
tax bracket.
Corporation tax is coming down. I'm ahead of myself a little bit. It's not quite yet there, but it will be shortly. We're moving in the direction of 20% tax.
Oh, that's good news.
Yeah. So I mean, it's no accident that London has probably the biggest share of European corporate headquarters in the world because of the favourable tax and regulatory environment and the access to the breadth of professional services and expertise.
Little rider, I did mention it's taxable profit, not accounting profit, and you've just got to be a little careful because there can be significant expenses which you incur here. For example, professional property expenses for lawyers, etc., or capital expenditure where you don't quite get the tax relief you expect. So I don't want you to assume it's 20% of your accounting profit. Again, get advice.
Thank you. Any other questions before we close the subject? Oh, yes, please.
Sorry, Donny Kieran and Tonego partner. I have a related question. That in having a subsidiary based in the UK, do you need a transfer price agreement to be able to repatriate the profits? A transfer price agreement between the mother and the subsidiary, so to speak?
Who's comfortable with that one?
It's you don't. you don't have to have a transfer pricing agreement to repatriate profits if you repatriate the profits by means of a distribution. However, if by repatriating profits you have in mind a neat tax advantageous transfer charge whereby you reduce the profits here and pay a management charge offshore, that would be more difficult. And wherever there is an economic interrelationship between an overseas company and a UK company, you do need to have transfer pricing as a serious consideration. And depending upon the size of your business and group, you may well need a written transfer pricing study.
And I think the advice that we give to companies of all sizes as they come over is just early on, because you don't have to make it complicated, you don't have to spend lots of money on it. Again, one of the joys of this jurisdiction. But think early on about, where do I want my revenues? Do I want them in the home country? Do I want them in London? And that will lead to the question of what the interrelation between the different companies of the group is, and then you can deal with, depending on your size, do you need a transfer pricing policy, or how do you memorialise it? But just tackle that up front, and then you can keep it simple.
Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen. So, yes, please, at the back.
Yes, my question goes for the accountant and the lawyer. It's about networking, professional networking. I have a Brazilian law firm myself, which is based in Brazil and in Paris, and I'm thinking about setting up a company here in London. And my business model would be, instead of seeking for the final client, to go for the law firms or the accountant firms that they do have clients that have business in Brazil. So what kind of networking should I do? Where should I go to find this kind of client that I need?
So you're seeking a kind of a partner or multiplier rather than establishing your own entity, is that?
No, I'm setting up my own company, but my client would be the law firms or accountant firms.
Okay, well, there's a...
Most people don't want to meet lots of lawyers and accountants in a room, so it's a...
I can give a simple answer, which is, I would personally look at the chambers of commerce in the UK. I'm not familiar with the Brazilian one, but there's presumably an Anglo-Brazilian chamber of commerce. Have a look at the members. You'll find law firms and accounting firms with a particular interest in those territories, and perhaps make a beeline for them and introduce yourself.
And I'm very happy to have a chat offline. I mean, there's the Law Society here that runs networking events for lawyers, and there are BABC, there are particular networking organisations which do attract lawyers, so very happy to talk to you about that as well.
Fantastic. Yes, the lady at the back.
My name is Guljan Mehrabi. I am a partner with a Kazakhstan law firm, and my question is, we are about to set up a business here in London, and my question is to Mark. Would it make any difference to your firm or the law firms like yourselves to do business with law firms like ourselves, the small niche law firm, if we had an office here, or being registered as a foreign law firm? Would it make any difference to you? Or perhaps would it give you more comfort to work with us rather than, you know, say, referring your clients to a country which you perhaps are not familiar with? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm very happy to have a chat offline on that as well. But I think as a general, as a sort of high-level answer to that question, I don't think it would, you know, and this is true for all businesses. If you've got someone on the ground who can come and speak to you on a day-to-day basis, and you meet and you get to know, then that does, more from a personal perspective, allows you to get known in the marketplace and under the skin, whatever industry you're in. In reality, you know, it's the quality back in Kazakhstan or the home jurisdiction, so which would make the key difference. But there are a number of foreign law firms who have rep offices in this marketplace, who effectively have people on the ground to do the networking and the sales and marketing.
Thank you.
Thank you. So at the risk of it becoming a lawyer's love-in, I better be careful how
Any more
I
legal
say that.
questions?
No, clearly there are some networking opportunities in and around the fringes of the event, and very specific opportunities to discuss those will be available. I'm keen to hear if they're in the room from Luis Frier. Luis, would you like to repeat your question, if we can get the mic over here?
Hello, everyone. There's quite a few Brazilians here today. It's good to know. So I'm considering bringing a fashion company from Brazil. It's doing really well there, but there's no name here yet. And I'm really wanting to focus it on the online side because I know UK is quite strong for e-commerce. So my question is, in terms of having a store, a brick and mortar place to support an online business, how important it is, and also what would be the difference when I'm looking for a property? What should I consider if I'm having an online model in my mind? That's the question.
So I guess to paraphrase two elements, how important is a physical presence in a fashion business?
Fashion business. Yeah, it's a apparel company.
Apparel company. And the second part of the question is, if you do need one, what sort of format? Where should it be?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a mixture of property, online, and even market assessment. Do you want to maybe lead off on that, James?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's around confidence of the consumer. So obviously, if there's a bricks and mortar building where they can go and shop and browse offline and then go and purchase online, it's obviously the way the culture is going. So Argos really led that in the UK, one of the biggest retailers here, where you can reserve online. I know it's not fashion, but it's more product related. But I always say with any business, whether it's a shop or a service company, if someone's got the consumer's mindset is if they can go and see somebody and actually physically speak to them, if there's a problem, they know where the company's located, then it gives them that peace of mind. So in my mind, it would only increase sales. So it may be a way to go.
Okay. And on the question of property, I mean, is there a right place to be in London? Is it like it's women's wear, apparel? Is that
everyone's? Yeah, it's unisex.
Unisex, and is casual or
more fashion street, I would say.
Okay, so
tempted.
I'm getting interested.
But presumably appealing to the younger, more fashion-oriented individual. You know, the obvious locations for you are the Covent Gardens, Carnaby Streets, Bond Street. The problem with London is it is quite a small place. You have to pick and choose your street very, very carefully. You can walk from one end of London to the other in about an hour. We're actually quite small. There's a lot of focus on retail premises in that small area. And I'd say that in Bond Street, for example, most of the traders in Bond Street are losing money. They're just there to get their brand out there. But just stepping away from those main streets, as long as you're very careful about examining the units, look at the size very carefully, look at how large the basement accommodation might actually be, because you'll be paying a lot for the storage that goes with these units. Provided you're very careful, then look at the peripheral locations around Covent Garden, probably. That would be my advice to you.
What about Shoreditch?
Shoreditch, most certainly. You haven't got as much in the way of tourist traffic there. It's mostly locals, people already living there. Very much the demographic for you, I believe. But again, it's a very tight and very small area. Not a lot of retail premises there. Be careful with it, but it will probably be at least a third less than the Covent Garden, Carnaby Street locations.
Okay, I think you have
yeah,
a follow-up
just one thing. One way to maybe just start that process, a lot of companies we speak to are doing, they're setting up pop-up shops just to get some client engagement feedback. I spoke to a company last month, and they did that at one of the major shopping centres, and they had to change their product slightly just to fit within that niche. But it gave them that insight. They got feedback, and they spoke to their clients and asked them where do they shop. So the people who show most interest in their products are the best people to ask. Where do you go shopping? How do you engage? Do you do it just online? Do you have the comfort of going to the store as well?
Do you have a comment, James?
Yeah, I'm going to be the advocate of the online world here. I had a look at Cavallera and what you did, and I think there are many examples actually of organisations that exist solely in the digital realm that are extremely profitable in fashion retail, and the demographic that it appeared you would be looking to sell to is a digitally native one. And I think that certainly if you're going to go anywhere, then East London, from having a look at the site, would arguably be your target market. But we work with organisations such as Dressipi or ASOS or Net-a-Porter or companies like Matches Fashion, if you have a look at what Matches have done, completely transitioned their business so that they started life as bricks and mortar, very high-end fashion company, and they now are, I mean, they are, you know, predominantly an online organisation with huge success. And I think that the one thing about putting bricks and mortar you know, on the table from a retail perspective is the cost associated with that. And you might want to explore, because you have an e-commerce store at the moment, don't you? You can buy online at the moment, is that right?
Yeah, you can in Brazil, you can, yes.
So you have the blueprint there. I think if you know your market, I would imagine that would be a fairly low risk option for your entry into market.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
And think early about the brand as well and brand protection.
Yeah.
Cool. Just the next question now would be related to how important it is. Should I, because I know the confidence is getting traction again around here now after the crisis. People are starting to understand that it's getting safer again. So is there room for upmarket competition now in this fashion industry, or should I go a bit cheaper because people don't know my brand here yet? Or on the other hand, it could be risky in devaluating the brand as well. That's my concern. So how to measure this weights?
Okay, so it feels like a bit of a marketing positioning question.
I think there's always room for more upmarket brands. I wouldn't play the price card. I would stay high end. If in doubt, trade up is one of the best rules of marketing. And I think if you start low, you're never going to get your prices up. So be true to yourselves. If it fits with the brand, if it fits with the values that you have already established and want to be known as, then stick with it and compete at the highest level.
Great, thank you.
There's another consumer product company in the room I'm guessing, the shoe business. Is Christian Howard? Christian, excuse me. Would you like to repeat your question, Christian?
Yeah, we run a Scandinavian shoe company that makes made-to-measure shoe mixed with a bit of technology where we scan your feet. We've operated our first store in UK for for a year now. And my question is general, when is the right time to expand, and what are the key things to consider?
And are you, sorry, just
Yes.
I have to answer the question, but you mean expand into other parts of London?
To rest of UK.
Okay,
Yes, yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Or more in London, of course.
Okay.
So I guess that's the sort of tipping point when you've saturated London, is it? Or what?
No, it's more. We have the same issue as the gentleman over there. It's a very small shop. Because it's made to measure, we don't have any stock. So most of our customers are online, but you get to get in first. But with only one shop, do you then start to expand and have more shops all over London, or do you go and conquer the rest of UK first? Oh, afterwards.
Perhaps Andrew, if you want to have a go, from a marketing perspective, what makes sense?
A shop in St James's would make the most sense.
That's where we are.
That's where you are, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, second stop would be Manchester, third stop would be Leeds, probably followed by Edinburgh, in that order if you're looking in terms of UK locations.
Yeah, even before we expand or do one or two more shops in London.
That's really your call. I presume in distribution terms, you're talking about a pair of shoes in a box.
Yes,
so
yes, I mean, that doesn't matter to us. It's whether it's hitting the right. Obviously there's hitting the right customers, and we know exactly where you could be. But it's also the key factor. Is there any factors to consider before you jump on and start buying more shops?
I think, as my colleague said, London is relatively small.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to worry about having a network of handmade shoe shops, across London. I think most people in London would be happy to travel for the half an hour's walk, or was it an hour's walk that my colleague said? So.
Depends how comfy your shoes
are. Yes, it does.
Exactly. I would look at other cities in the UK that are doing well.
Sure. Okay.
But I'd also consider City of London and Canary Wharf as well, where you've got a lot of business people in those locations. Look at those two as well.
Exactly. My second question is making a big impact on a small budget. Because with a small retailer as we are, it's increasingly difficult when you're looking at the high streets, there's very little small shops. It's all seems to be big chains, whether it's here in London or in Bristol or anywhere else in UK. How do we make ourselves relevant, and how do you keep up with the budgets of the larger chains?
Yeah, I mean, I had some discussions with an Australian footwear company a couple of months ago, and a lot of their success, pretty much overnight, within a year to 18 months, this was in Australia, was around getting accreditation. So they went to the professionals within the industry, who then said, these are the shoes you need if you're you're a mother looking for your son's school shoes, some trainers that will support them, that help their feet, etc. That accreditation then got them loads of PR, pretty much free of charge. They used a PR agency which sort of increased that, and then it almost became a cycle of sales coming through. They were then able to increase marketing. They're now doing TV advertising. So start off small, but really look for who can be advocates for your business to make you stand out from the crowd, basically.
Thank you. There's a question here around marketing of services from Rui Trindade. Is Rui in the room? Yeah.
Hello, thank you. My name is Rui Trindade. I'm CEO of a company. We do basically two things. We finance projects for companies, and we work on international business development. We are also in the service industry, and although services is the fastest growing sector in international trade, one of the main challenges that we face is how can we market a service when there is no car to test, to drive, no shoes to try on, and no computer to take home. So service marketing for us has been quite difficult, and it's very different from traditional product marketing, due specifically to distinctive characteristics of the services and how they affect both customer behavior and marketing strategy. So how can a small and medium enterprise like ourselves, working in the service industry, can thrive in the global marketplace with its distinctive characteristics? Thank you.
So you're clearly established and trading in the service business in Portugal?
Yes, in Portugal and here in the UK. We incorporated a business 2 years ago. We have some clients both in the UK and abroad, but it's as mentioned, it's very difficult for us to give some test drive to the companies we try to approach.
So what is the service?
Our services are two. Well, we help companies to get funding through the equity venture capitals, also incentives from the European Union, and we also do international business development. We are here in the UK, we are in Brazil and in Portugal, and our network covers something like 7 to 8 countries. The difficulty we face is actually how can we, in terms of marketing, prove that we can do that.
Okay, sounds like you're doing okay so far, but maybe Steve, as a marketeer of services?
Yeah, you sound like a bit of a competitor, so I would say just pack your bags, go back. Portugal's lovely this time of year. Brazil, I'd love to go to Brazil. It's fantastic. So look, the problem you have, of course, is that you sort of sell an intellectual skill, and I don't mean to sort of sound rather plumped up, but actually, I mean, within the profession that I am in, any frustrated but quality practitioner who doesn't make partnership, him and his buddy set up at home in a boutique, and they go along and they advise companies on raising finance and mergers and acquisitions, and they do the same thing. They do it cheaper, and they keep every dollar of the fee for themselves. So it's a very, very fragmented, so it's not as specialist as it was, even though it is a specialist skill, but it's a very fragmented market. And actually, the success stories in the boutiques in the UK, it tends to be for them, as they expand either geographies, territory within the UK or territories overseas, is find a client who is in their domestic territory and the second territory, and almost use that client as the piggyback in, and then as very much as the case study, and then get that client to sort of endorse. But it is extremely difficult, as I say, it's not a unique skill set, it's a very, very competitive skill set, and it's a very personable skill set. You know, my clients that I've done deals with over the last 25 years, I may not hear from them for 5 or 6 years, and the next time they want to buy a business, they'll phone me up. So, you know, I don't have an active fee every month from my clients. I have a fee every 5 or 6 years from a small number of people who follow me, and I follow them. So, I think either piggyback off of client case studies and accomplishments and really get into your network, and your network was going to have to be, you know, possibly, if you've got a unique angle somewhere, then get into the lawyers and the banks for that sort of strata of business that you think is your preferred client. Is that, you know, multi-billion-dollar businesses or early-stage businesses? But, you know, find the matching lawyers in the network, because lawyers have always got clients looking for money, and quite often the bigger advisory firms are deemed to be too expensive, so they're looking for a more boutique-y type solution. That's your network, I think, accessing clients that way, sharing clients.
And as another professional services, you know, as a lawyer, I mean, I think certainly as a firm, we think as well that it's industry and sector specialisation. So you know, and maybe you're doing this already, but are you digital? Are you life sciences? You know, what area? And actually, if you're tech, you know, are you fintech, ad tech, ed tech? I think this market in London, there's opportunity, but the competitive nature means you really need to have a focus as well.
Thank you, Mark. My helpful assistant here is indicating that we've got 5 minutes on the clock. So are there any further or final questions from the floor that we haven't covered off already? Yes, sir.
Well, it's more a personal question for my own purposes. I looked at the list of people attending, and I would like to meet a certain Eddie Thomas. Is she still in the room?
Could Eddie show?
No, Eddie Thomas.
He should be in
Well,
marketing.
that was it, more or less. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, look, I think the gentleman has illustrated one of the most valuable parts of a gathering like this. It is around networking and identifying you know, potential supporters, advisors, customers in what is essentially a very large and diverse city. But I think the experience we've heard from the floor and from the panelists is that you're not alone. London, although it feels like a jungle when you first arrive, is actually a series of villages. Someone described it to me. They're disparate, but they're you know, populated by common interest groups, and with the you know, social media, the number of you know, events like this, and indeed London and Partners' ability to facilitate gatherings and networkings and common issues, I think we're in very, very, very good company. It just remains for me to thank the panelists, who I think you know, you will have a chance to re-engage with, I think, in the open networking and reception if they're sticking around, and hopefully you've got all their details if you wish to follow up. Excuse me, I think we have a final question here.
One last question. I've got a company abroad which got a specific name. And is there any way I can reserve the name for the company in the UK? The company doesn't exist yet.
So that Companies House is our register of companies in the UK, and so you can go on there and you can look and see if a company has a name. What I would say is, if you really want to protect a name, it's a trademark, not a company name. Because if you register, Lloyd's is a bad example because I'm sure someone's got a trademark over it, but if you register Lloyd's Limited, it wouldn't stop me registering Lloyd's Europe Limited from a Companies House perspective. So go to Companies House to see company names, but the trademark is how you protect the name and prevent other people using it.
Thank you. So as I say, there are opportunities to take some of these very specific questions offline, and we'll hope you take advantage of this. And it just remains me to thank again my distinguished panelists, London and Partners for hosting, Bloomberg for these lovely facilities and excellent lunch, and most importantly of all, you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and join us today. So thank you again for attending. Very good. So even better news then. There's coffee being served in the lobby for the next half an hour, and you're welcome to join us in the area where we had lunch.
And it's a subsidiary of okay, so the problem you have with these sort of foreign corporates with their subsidiaries seeking funding, seeking equity funding, which obviously is from an investor's point of view, me, if I put money into a subsidiary under the UK rules, the money can very quickly be passed back to India and used for something completely different.
I was going to say the Spanish one over in London.
It's a UK company, and also therefore by you and me, the money goes to
Sorry, drop your phone. Just grab your one. Oh yeah, sorry. Oh yeah, we're talking. And from the back there. Perfect. Thank you. I'm one of the next. I'm on the panel. Who I'm supposed to be asking to what effect? Either of us. Oh, yeah. Okay. We're gonna have to choose. Still 2 bars. glasses
do it
are
on
no
the back
good.
on the back of your dress.
Yeah?
Do it there.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you. Let me just do the. Can I just get you to move? Sorry, can I get you to move this badge first? And I'll just put the. Yeah, if you just keep that in your bag,
Yeah.
you'll need it to get out again. I'm just going to put this. Excuse me. Oops, sorry. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's the trouble. So if you, and if you, most social enterprises only really it's perfect for SEIS, and you can't. I mean, it's just bizarre.
That's fine.
But we really
It won't fall, but I mean, it is pulling down the back.
Not many people are going to see my back, right?
No, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the alternative is if you could just hold it in your lap.
Okay. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, if it's uncomfortable, just pull it out.
Okay.
You'll be sitting down most of the time.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Okay.
Yeah,
just go like this. Back up, back up.
So that's all ready. I'll turn the volume on when you start speaking. Otherwise, it'll be off.
Great, fantastic. Thank you.
It was all about, if you're building a gym in Derbyshire and it's going to benefit the people there, then fine. But if you're doing something on a national scale, there was no support. Hi.
I'm Julia.
Julia.
David,
hi,
lovely. Andrew, lovely to meet you. I'm David,
Hello.
lovely to meet you. Yes,
Nice to see you too.
Julie said that we should meet, so she sent me an email this morning saying,
so-
I'm really sad I'm not coming, but other people will be there to show you the love.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell us about you.
So I have just set up Ignite, which is the first impact investment fund by a corporate in energy. So talking about new source of investment.
That's good. That's great.
It's really well. So we've committed 3.4 million from the fund already. We're running the Big Energy Idea, which Jess has been helping us with, which is fantastic. And we're about 35. Yes, exactly. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Exciting.
And what do you do, Andrew?
So I run the bakery, which
right.
is the advertising sector marketing accelerator. But I also work with UKTI.
Yes.
And I do a lot of work with entrepreneurial businesses coming into the UK, often looking for funding and trying to figure out, how they achieve that. So, and I've had a couple of entrepreneurial startups myself as well. So raised some money, and it's much more difficult now than when I was doing it all those days ago. So that's what I think I'm interested in finding out. I'm not sure what the makeup of the audience is.
No idea. I got the call yesterday from Julie Devonshire, who's my director, saying I can't get in because of the tube strike. Do you mind standing in?
Sorry.
So I have very little idea what the audience makeup is as well.
Yeah, well, maybe that's something we should find out, perhaps.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and because I'm sort of not really sure how many of the companies are socially oriented or not.
Well, obviously that's going to be interesting for you as well.
What's your
Hi, Salami, how are you?
Great.
Have you had a good day?
Yes, thank you.
My understanding wasn't that focused at all on the social element of the day at all. So,
yes.
We'll try and introduce something, I guess. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
we'll try and bring that in.
We'll bring that in, yeah. So, well, it all comes back to purpose, doesn't it, anyway?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know if the tube strikes affected the take-up. It's been really hard moving around London the last couple of days, hasn't it? So.
Well, I chose not to come in yesterday.
All right.
And today my assistant managed to plan everything within a 10-minute walk.
Oh, fantastic.
So I've done 7 meetings
and
come here.
Like yours. I just need an assistant.
Yeah.
Well, she also does all of our operations and logistics and
she sounds
application management. She's amazing. She's amazing.
That's great.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
And so how long ago did Ignite actually launch?
So we incorporated in August, made our first investment in September, and then we've officially launched on the 3rd of December.
Right.
So
it's. I don't want to confuse you because there is another accelerator called Ignite.
Ignite 100.
Ignite 100.
Yes,
that's
they're
right.
up in the north west.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yes, and they are digital accelerators.
Yes.
So we're focused on the energy sector only. So we're energy and energy-related products and services.
So I know it's early days, but the kind of makeup of the kind of businesses that you're seeing, you know, what kind of...
Say hello here.
Hi, how are you?
Good to
and
see
you?
you.
Yeah,
Okay,
good to see you too.
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you.
Fine,
You're
fine.
Hello,
Hey.
David.
Hello. Okay, you're for Julia.
Not to be left out.
Oh, yeah. You
What's
know,
going on here?
in London, I never know because as a Chilean, I give kisses all over. That's
a good thing
It's
to
good to know. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
No, we're Chilean
Exactly.
around.
What's missing out there? I'm standing in for Julie.
Yeah. I think you will have this picture. I hope you don't mind.
That's fine. She's not going to look at
You, you can say that you cut your... No, I
Yeah.
don't know. You won't have...
That's no problem at all.
We're just checking the USBs, but those little things are sometimes difficult. You made it.
Yeah.
Cycling, walking, flying, or...
Cycling in the rain.
I'm really happy. I've only had to walk like 5 minutes from my office, so it's been really great. So it's really cool.
Yeah, no, the trains were running fine, and then I just walked from Moorgate. It was great.
Moorgate is just here. So.
Well, I had a meeting down in Liverpool Street, and then I just walked up here, so it's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we were just trying to find out and ascertain the audience. Do you know anything about them?
No, pretty much. I mean, we have 26 countries.
Okay.
122 companies.
Wow.
Some of them have come and go. There was a flight in the morning. I would say startups, questions about incubators actually.
Yeah.
We say we will answer later on. 5 years size, probably 4 to 5 countries already. And the type of companies as kiosk or interaction. So companies that are already well established with probably 20 international countries with their HQs. Some of them move the whole HQ here, some have the European HQ, etc. So, so I would say it's quite mixed. Many questions about funding. The startups are actually the ones that ask the most.
Have they been, I mean, and how's the feeling of the day gone? Has it been relatively positive, or are people upset about the funding situation, or, you know, what's
positive tone, positive question, a lot of laugh actually. So if you continue the jokes, it will be good.
Pressure's on.
In the morning was I don't know, probably one session that didn't work as well.
Hi.
I
think you're other speakers.
Yes,
hi.
Hi. Lucy is from the London Stock Exchange.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, Lucy. I'm Andrew from the bakery.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Julia from Ignite.
Hello.
Nice to
I
meet
wonder
you.
whether the moderator arrived. Do you know
I don't
Kate
know.
Marshall?
I don't think
Okay, I will go whether to see. Excuse me. I will bring her, so you are well hosted by her. Give me a second, please.
Thank you.
I was at the stock exchange the other day. It was really great. It was my first time. I was there and somebody rang the bell, you know, or opened the London Stock Exchange. You know, you have that ceremony. The Sirius program, UK Trade and Investment graduate Sirius program.
Yeah.
And I was saying, it was a bit of a dream of mine. I remember the last time I was there, I was a little boy on a school trip to the London Stock Exchange. It's totally different, obviously different building, and it was all in that. But it was really great to go there as a, you know, maybe a slightly older boy, and have somebody, you know, actually open the day. It was really great. It was really, really cool.
It is good. I mean, we typically use it for when new companies come to the market. So we had one yesterday, and it's just a nice way to market.
It's a lovely idea.
Just so it's not just signing the paperwork and
Yeah.
back to work the next day.
Yeah. No, it's really cool.
So it's just good.
Brilliant.
I'm glad you've seen it. So
Yeah.
I've had a positive experience.
Yeah, it was very good. And we took a load of graduate entrepreneurs that we're running through a program that UKTI are funding. And that was really phenomenal, really exciting.
through.
It's
good.
What is the pipeline like for you guys?
Yeah, no, it's been really good because I think that there's, you know, obviously there's lots of energy and energy related, and obviously it's a big topic in terms of societal challenges, and so lots of entrepreneurs wanting to do things with energy but never having anyone that has previously funded specifically in that space, but then also given this support to go with it as well. So
what's the funding amount?
So it's 50,000 to 2 million, and we kind of picked it up that level to, you know, get the people that had seriously thought about their business plans, but were still early stage enough to be able to kind of take advantage of the support and nurture their business.
And you look for equity in return?
So we do debt equity convertibles. That's our preference. Because what we're looking to do is recycle as much capital through the fund as possible, rather than necessarily sitting with equity stakes.
Hello.
So, hi.
No organisers here.
No organisers, but you look like...
You look like you...
Okay, and so... And the funds have come from the energy industry?
Yeah, so it's from, we're backed by Centrica,
right?
Who is the owner of British Gas. So
yes.
So we have access to 40,000 employees and 200 years of history.
Sounds good.
So,
and what about the other energy providers?
So they're not doing anything yet. They may do, and we'd be happy to work with them.
Oh right, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not exclusive to. You know, if EDF said, "Oh, we fancy a piece of that," you wouldn't mind, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and Centrica wouldn't mind.
No.
That's cool. Right.
Innovation comes from the pursuit of
Absolutely.
Societal change.
Yes. Cool. That's really cool. Well, we'll have to come and have a look. I mean, apart from the bakery, I was saying, the work that I do with UKTI, we're often looking for really interesting businesses, innovation from overseas, typically, and convincing them to come to the UK. And when we see particularly, you know, interesting energy-related or clean tech-related opportunities, it's quite a struggle to know exactly what to do with them. So,
come and talk to us.
Yeah, so I think we should do that.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And you know, Nick Baird is joining us.
Yeah.
So I met him on Tuesday, and he's fabulous.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He didn't stay as long as he should have done. So, no, I think he'll be great. Cool. Unbelievable at the moment. I mean, it's a massive change.
You are my organisers, you're my panel.
I'm
your moderator.
Hello, I'm Julia.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Andrew. David. Hello, David. Lucy. Hi, I'm Kate. Kate, I'm Kate with Grumpy Taxi Driver.
Yes, I had the grumpy picture on mine as well.
Well, I think they've had a long day.
Yeah, I know, but it's not my fault.
They're making more money this week than they have done in years.
Yeah.
What are they worried about?
Exactly.
Probably buggering off to Spain on the weekend.
Yeah, no, it's going nuts. I mean, the marketing, advertising industry, because of the change in technology over the last 5 to 10 years particularly, just the old model is just broken. Just doesn't work anymore. So they're all looking, all the big advertisers, the big brands, you know, the Unilevers, the Crafts, you know, the Heinz's, BMWs, they're all looking for better ways to engage with their audience. All the advertising agencies, the Saatchis and the OMGs and all these kinds of guys, struggling to keep their revenues coming through, and it's all being diverted through the internet.
Yeah.
So, you know, and we kind of are in the middle of that cyclone. So it's kind of fascinating.
Interesting, yeah. It does feel like a real inflection point in kind of economic development of, you know, just having to be innovative in a whole new sense that people hadn't, you know, everyone I talk to is just making shit up right now because there is no trodden path.
No, exactly. No, quite right. It's the people who make
I
shit
major
up
in MSU.
That's great. It's all about how to do that better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And make it look like you're not doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the key.
That's the neat
That's
thing.
the absolute key.
I'm going to write that down.
other term is ooching.
Ooching?
I sold ooching to my board.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about trying things out, adjusting and changing and flexing as you need to, because you never know what's going to come your way.
Okay. So it's just another verb. Ooching.
Another
I'm
verb.
just ooching along.
Comes from sailing.
Okay.
So you get on a boat, you don't know what the wind's going to do, you don't know what the sea's going to do, you don't know what your crew's going to be like, so you ooch.
Oh, cool. And is it double O-C-H?
Yes.
Right, okay. That's a great word. I've learned a new word. Yeah, that's great.
How's your day? Yeah, ooching along.
Just trying to figure out where the wind's blowing.
When our finance director started using it, I was pleased.
Really? Well, I'd be slightly
Yeah.
concerned.
Yeah. Yeah. He said, no, for this fund, we are going to ooch it.
Cool.
That's great.
So who else have they had today? Anybody?
I've had lots of people, but I don't think you know, such colour as us.
No, all the same to best to last. So you've all just arrived just
Yes.
now.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but I think they've had a lot of people through on the day. I think there's been a lot of people coming in and going out. It's a long day to spend a whole day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just nuts, isn't it? But, so I think, I know one of my colleagues was in earlier on, or one of the bakery residents was in doing a bit, and he said, oh, I can't stay all day. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of time to take out, isn't it? So I hope the content's been good.
Yeah.
Hope we just haven't got the dregs left.
Well, there seems to be a good lot still there. So. Yeah. They've come from the great patisserie
Yes,
food.
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a great venue, though.
I hadn't been here before. It's fabulous.
I like the fish tank. Don't you, as you come up the escalator?
Yeah.
Much mistake.
I always worry every time I go near a Bloomberg terminal. I think, oh my God, I'm going to do something I shouldn't.
We've got several Bloomberg terminals in our office, and the one that we used to use, it's broken. It's going to take us till November to get it fixed.
Till November?
Yeah.
You need to have a word while you're here.
I know, it's just who should I see?
Oh, man.
We were just thinking, how could it take why so long?
What on earth? Yeah.
So we've got others, but bizarre. So we thought we'd just be able to overnight and get a replacement, but obviously not. So must be something to do with our contract. Somebody's done it obscure. Somewhere.
Yeah, it's nice to see you. All right. I know. Yeah, very good, thank you. Yeah,
Hoping it finishes tonight because I've literally got to run straight after. I've got to get to Gatwick for dinner.
Okay.
Oh gosh.
I'm already going to be late for it.
What time's that?
Well, drinks are from 7 and the dinner starts at 7:30. It's quite tired as well.
And what time's it meant for?
Well, I think our session is
getting out there.
Yeah.
so if it finishes at 2:46.
How are you going to get across?
I am going to try and find a taxi that can get me to City Centre ASAP, but it's going to be rush hour and the traffic is very
I cycled through town and yesterday I work on near Old Street.
Yeah.
Just cycling, the amount of traffic, I just couldn't get through it on a bike. So
it is crazy.
but I think it'll be quieter today. A lot more people will stay at home today.
I think that's true actually. Certainly this morning it felt quieter.
Well, Moorgate was really good to Paddington, where it was literally fine. Yeah. So.
On the tube, is that
On the tube, yeah.
So which line? Just some lines
Hammersmith and City's working. Northern Line's working. Yeah. So I just sort of, was like, well, let me just get to wherever is the closest I can get to, and then walk the rest.
I had a meeting in Mayfair yesterday afternoon. I got there absolutely fine. I took a taxi, and then coming back took me nearly 2 hours.
Oh my goodness.
I started to get a bus, and then it wasn't going anywhere. So I then started to walk, and then it absolutely chucked me
Where
down.
to? Where were you going?
I was just coming back to the office, coming back to the city.
quickest way of getting it was my bike. Kicked down with that and turned up for this film. Just drenched. Not quite camera ready just yet. A bit of a stranger. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. What time are we supposed to start? I thought it was now.
Quarter past, yeah. We'll just talk very quickly.
Yeah, we'll just get through it and they'll ask not very many questions.
One word answers. Yes or no. So you know Julie?
Yes.
Is she very well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was one of those very bizarre. So I came back from the States in July and my appointment was made known in the organisation, and then Sharon Pickford, who was our marketing director, said, oh, you must come and meet the Devonshires, both of them,
yes, of course.
you know, Lord and Lady.
Right, let's tick us all off. Okay. So, Lucy, I've got you. I've got... No, where's Mark gone? He's gone somewhere. No, he's not here.
No, we've got...
Julia?
I'm Julia.
Yes, you're Julia, that's fine. And Andrew, you're here.
No, that's
No,
not me.
you're
I might be the other Julia, or I'm David. No, I'm David.
You're
I'm
David.
replacing Julie
Ah,
Devonshire.
right. Okay, that makes sense. So, David, fantastic. Julia.
Yeah.
And we've got Lucy.
And Andrew's here as well.
We've got Mark.
I'm Andrew.
You're Andrew. No, I've got the... You're Andrew. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right.
Is Mark being replaced by somebody else? Mark. Hello, Mark. I was just looking around. That's fantastic. I'm Kate. Excellent. We are arranging today. Fabulous, yeah.
Hugely brilliant. Only left-handed with
I fear I'm going to throw to you first, Mark.
Yes, so she introduced me to both of them, and then everywhere I would go, Julie would be.
Julie tends to be around.
Yeah. So literally coming out of Moorgate Tube Station, we'd bump into each other,
anyway.
and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was working. The Ignite Fund. I was working at Big Science Capital for a little while when I think you first came.
It was my colleague Lisa. Yeah, it's my colleague Lisa. Yeah. Lisa, Jenny, and Chris.
Fantastic progress you've made in a year and a half.
Well, it starts at 7, but I'm going to make it.
4 investments done.
That's great. Is it a physical incubation space? Or?
No, we thought.
see if she's there. So it always happens to me when I wear one. Big venture challenge.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon again. If I can invite you to take your seats, please. Please don't be shy about sitting towards the front. Otherwise, our people in internet land looking at us live streaming will think the tube strikes are worse than they actually are. My politicians will not be pleased. So if we could take our seats. Thank you very much.
You could offer £5.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Table there.
So the final session of our more formal setting, we have an esteemed group of panellists. I'll let Kate Marshall, who is our moderator, introduce herself on the panels. All I wanted to say about Kate and UK Trade and Investment is the panel that you've just been part of had a number of our commercial partners on it that were giving practical advice and professional advice about doing business in London and the UK. One of our other very important partners is UK Trade and Investment, which is the UK government's national organisation for both promoting British companies and helping them achieve competitiveness and export overseas, as well as attracting inward investment into the UK. So a very, very important partner of London and Partners and a key source of our lead generation. So Kate revels in the title of Director of Strategy and Policy for the investment group, but Kate and I have worked together for a couple of years since I came to LNP, and the essence of it is Kate's role is to make sure that lots of other parts of the UK are joined up as one with UK Trade and Investment, and she's done a fabulous job of doing that, and we are serviced very well by UK Trade and Investment. It's a credit to Kate because we're not the easiest bunch to deal with. So with Kate's expertise and with a expert and diverse panel, we're going to look at the subject of growth matters or growth matters or growth matters. So if I could hand over to Kate, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Do we have any more takers for the middle tables, or are we happy to stay on the outside? I'll let you move in as you like. So, good afternoon or good evening. I think we're in a much nicer environment than if we were outside right now for anybody who's stepped outside in the last couple of minutes. It is a wet and sort of grey day out there. I think both myself and our distinguished can you just tell what's happening here this afternoon? Distinguished panellists, that is a Freudian slip if ever I heard one. Distinguished panellists know that we are in fact between you and cocktails. But we are nonetheless going to add extreme value to the afternoon, I'm sure. But we are going to take it through briskly so that we're all out by 5:30. And I think beyond that, I shall just introduce very quickly, but then we'll go into some questions. Mark, Julia, Andrew, I got it right, Lucy and Dave. There you go. Fantastic. So we're going to talk about growth matters, obviously in terms of London's unrivaled business support ecosystem. And what I thought I might do is invite 2 or 3 questions from the floor, and then we will ask our panellists to take them one at a time, and then we'll just move through. Do I have any takers for our first question? Don't be shy. I know there's someone out there who's got a burning question to ask. Yes, sir.
Hi, good evening. My name is Samit Biswas. I'm representing Advatech Healthcare. It's actually a healthcare startup. We have started 2 years back in India. Now we are in UK. So my question to the panelists will be, like here we have formed a company is a wholly owned subsidiary by the Indian company. So suppose if we are going for a funding kind of stuff for our future growth and aspiration, how we can take it forward that?
Okay, some funding for future growth. Second question from the floor. Yes, sir.
Hi, Henrik Jespersen there. We're a startup soaring. We're doing learning and communications in Tech City. My question is, when you're an inward startup, we're from Norway originally. How do you make the bridge over from a desk at, let's say, the Trampery, a co-working space, into a more incubator, a more high growth environment? How do you make that bridge?
Thank you, Henry. I think Mark might be well placed to start us off. I'll take one more question, and then perhaps Mark would like to kick off on those. One more question? Okay, well, why don't we start with just those two, Mark, and then we'll move along the panel.
I thought the question was going to be, why does growth matter? Which I have an answer to, so I'll try and slip that in. But to the first question, I think if I was raising capital for a healthcare business in India, focusing on the Indian market, I would, as everyone else does, go around and find the right private equity and venture capital firms who focus on emerging markets or India or the healthcare subsector. And my trick would be to really get to know them before you go in and make the pitch, get to know the people and understand their investment strategy. They may not be right for you. You could contact the BVCA, but I mean the market is extremely big, and people are now trying to be very specific on what they, what they want to invest in. In terms of Tech City, and I think going into a larger environment, I think that's what we should talk about. I mean, the great successes in America, in Milwaukee and Boston, in San Francisco, are places where people can meet and come together. So if you, I don't know where you sit in your office, but if you're on your own, I would leave that environment and I'd go and sit in a room with 20 or 30 other people. So all great business comes from talking to people. And one thing I'm working on at the moment with the DWP is to find innovation centres, to create innovation places across Britain. I think the total cost of opening 25 innovation centres for the less well-off in Britain is zero, because you just find a local entrepreneur to put drinks on once every 4 Fridays and get people together. So I think it's quite simple. If anyone wants to come back later, if I have time to answer the question why growth matters and why here, I'm happy to think about that.
Well, I think we will definitely come back to that.
Great.
Andrew, you might have some thoughts for Henry.
Yeah, well, two answers to two questions, but interesting, in a way very similar. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure whether the gentleman has come here to London to raise investment from the UK.
Not really, actually. We have an IT platform where actually we can produce a load of current images.
Right.
So there is a tremendous pressure in terms of service delivery.
Okay.
And we have the IT-enabled service delivery model, which, as a client, they can manage on their own most of the disease, like diabetes, cardiac issues, back pain. Some lifestyle diseases can be managed by their own.
Okay.
Same thing we want to develop in UK market as well.
Okay. So I think my answer to your question, therefore, would be, if you're looking to raise investment here in the UK for a healthcare company, which is really, really viable, because especially given that the National Health Service, I understand, is the largest employer anywhere in the world apart from the Chinese army. The opportunity for really breakthrough technology healthcare businesses is vast here in the UK, and there are some specialist investors. But as Mark was absolutely saying, find out who it is that you're approaching and what their particular portfolio is. But my view would be, if you're looking for a UK investor, you would need to move the IP from your Indian business to your UK business, because they wouldn't be interested in investing in an Indian-held IP business. In terms of moving from a sort of co-working space to a more, mentor-related or growth environment. The great thing about the fact that you happen to be in Tech City or in this part of London is that there are a whole bunch of really great different accelerators, and they all, incubators and co-working spaces, and they all have slightly different models. Hoxton Mix, for example, great place where they're doing lots of co-collaboration, and the businesses in the Hoxton mix tend to work with one another on specific projects. So a creative guy might work with an education guy to deliver a solution. They all work together. I happen to run the bakery, which is advertising and brand focused business, and we work a lot with our residents to make sure that they're ready to talk to the kinds of customers that they want to talk to. So again, do your research on the different types, and there are well over 50 co-working spaces and incubators just in this little region alone, and far more in the rest of the country.
Thank you, Andrew. Let's take another couple of questions. Questions over here? Oh, you're very quiet this afternoon. David, you haven't woken them up or given them an appropriate incentives. Sir, thank you very much.
Does there exist in London kind of a system with there is a senior man behind you who is following up in a startup? Because somebody here from Portugal told us we were the startup case of 2012. So there I could find, is there a kind of program that you can have always senior advice when you do a startup in London?
Can I be crass and ask if you're asking for paid senior advice or for coaches and mentors?
Yeah, it's more mentors, like a kind of a program that you can follow for mentorship.
Okay, I'll let the panel just think on that and take another question. Sir. Well done.
I think that deserves a prize, that question.
Great. Actually, I might ask our two social, Julia and David, to answer or address some of your questions around coaches and mentors, and then perhaps invite Mark to talk about why growth matters, and then we'll take one more in the middle.
Yes, it's a question on the network within the technology sector in East London in particular, or just London in general. It seems to be fantastic networks around sort of start-up and early stage, but our focus in our business is very much looking at the more established business coming out of those and the high growth is going international. Are there networks specifically targeting the CEOs of maybe over 5 million, 10 million, 20 million turnover companies, so network together looking to grow their businesses internationally or to improve the growth of their business internationally?
Thank you very much indeed. And I might ask Lucy to come in on that because I think that might be a sort of useful one in terms of that journey. From Henry right now to the place that you're talking about, there is a journey, and I think Lucy might be able to talk to us hopefully about that. So, can I invite Julia and David perhaps to talk to the first question?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the Managing Director of Ignite Social Enterprise, which is the first impact investment fund set up by a corporate. We're backed by Centrica PLC, the owner of British Gas. So we have about 200 years' worth of history and 40,000 employees at our disposal. We're investing £10 million in businesses that are energy and energy related. And I think to your question specifically, we very much view investment as actually a very small part of the puzzle in terms of business growth. And it's access to networks, mentors, skills, and that type of support that really enables businesses to grow rapidly and accelerate their scale. And so the programs that we have put together is very much focused on matching an appropriate mentor, an advisor, and whether that be within the Centrica network or within the broader family that we're working with. We're really looking at the social impact, so thinking about your purpose and why you exist and how to drive social change, and have worked with many businesses to do that already in our very short history. But I'll let David add to that.
Sure. So I work for Unlimited. Unlimited is a foundation that supports social entrepreneurs all across the UK. Been going for 10 years and we've supported over 11,000 entrepreneurs. So social entrepreneurs looking to tackle some of the greatest social issues that happen in England. I particularly work at the ventures team, and that's working with enterprises that are looking to scale up, develop their business, and take on risk capital investment. I mean, we run a number of programs which might answer your question slightly. 3 programs, one called the Big Venture Challenge, which we are actually very close to what Julia mentioned. A lot of our support, a lot of the program is designed around having connections to the right kind of people. We find that, yes, we fill the gap in where that funding gap exists for a lot of startups, social enterprises. But actually, beyond that, it's the connections to the right people, to mentors, to coaches. And I'd always say there are a lot of accelerator incubation type spaces that programs developed around that. And I think that's the key to growth.
Thank you. Mark, talk to us about why growth.
Well, just on mentoring, the Swedish, are you Swedish? Because I'm on the board of the Swedish Chamber of Commerce, and we're trying to start exactly that, a mentoring program for the retired Swedes in London, reaching out to young entrepreneurs. So we're designing it at the moment. In my view, in terms of starting a business, you've got to lead with your idea and be on your own there, and then network out to be inspired and to consult with others, probably of your same age, and then to ask questions to a mentor. So this idea that Ian Duncan Smith has developed with colleagues in Milwaukee is to provide essentially mentoring ideas to the less well-off trying to start a business by meeting in a single place. So I think this is an incredibly important aspect of new startups and new business. Why growth matters? Well, I'm very glad you asked me that question. So I thought I was going to talk a little bit about London, but if anyone doubts why London should be the capital of the world in terms of sort of global finance, we have the right language, we have the right time zone, and it is the global financial centre with a great ecosystem. It's leading in not only real investing but social impact investing. The new G8 body that Cliff Pryor sits on and that I sit on with Ronnie Cohen was led by the Prime Minister to set up the social impact investing industry globally. We have a fantastically run UKTI business secretary and a great trade policy. We're changing our international development policy to be about business. You just have to read Justine Greening's speech 2 weeks ago on international development and why 0.7% is not just good for the poor in Africa and elsewhere, but it's good for British business. So I think growth matters in Britain and in Europe because we are growing very poorly, we are very old, and we are heavily indebted at the state and the individual level, not at the corporate level. And when I say we, I mean the old world, which is North America, Europe, Japan, and Australasia. We represent a tiny percentage of the future spending power of the world. So in 2040, 82% of middle-class consumption, 82%, will come from the new world. That's everyone else, not America, Europe, Japan, or Australasia. So the power of consumption through real consumption, through social media, through opinion, through networks, and through trade in the future is going to be overwhelming. And for us in Europe, we're also faced by a completely different challenge while all this new consumption and new trade is going on, which is that we're very old. There are going to be 58 million new older people in Europe in 10 years from now, and the ratio of workers to the retired is reaching 2 to 1, which is the worst ratio in demographic history. As you saw, if you are born in Northumberland and you're a girl 2 days ago, you'll live to 105. So our demographics in Europe are appalling. We have far too few children. We have a severe lack of migration, even though the politicians can't face that. But we have a great shortage of young labour. So we need to make babies, we need to get out there, we need to rejuvenate, we need to reduce our debt, and the only way to face our great demographic challenge is to grow. And the only way really to grow is for London to become the global capital of trade and really to position ourselves as absolutely at the centre of everything. And that's why, in my view, growth matters, because at the moment 0.4 or 0.5% per annum, maybe tipping up to 1.2, 1.4 is nothing. The rest of the world is averaging 4.2. extrapolate out, and our relative poverty compared to the emerging world is increasing by the year. So for Europe to remain competitive and our children to get jobs, we need to work harder and grow more. And part of that is the promotion of London and the great leadership of UKTI. Definitely.
Thank
you are, Kate. You're it.
Lucy, do you want to go in for the last question, if we can recall it, which we were just talking about as you're sort of moving up from where Henry is at the moment, no doubt doing startlingly brilliant things. Yes, that's it. As you're moving up and you're getting closer possibly to, in some way, sort of realising your asset and sharing it in a wider environment, perhaps, and just the benefits of the LSE. I'm probably not allowed to say the LSE because I can get the LSEs mixed up. The London Stock Exchange.
We don't call ourselves the LSE because it is confusing. I'm a regional director in the primary markets team at the London Stock Exchange, and our role within primary markets is to provide support and guidance to private companies who are considering potentially accessing the public markets, floating on either AIM, which is our market for smaller growing companies, or the main market, which is our market for more established companies. So the London Stock Exchange is at the heart of the city. We attract businesses from all over the world to our market to access that capital. So the main market, as I said, is our market for larger established companies. And companies that are on the main market, they didn't start their life there. They started as potentially a startup where the gentleman is. And they've grown over time, and they've been able to access investors, grow their businesses, acquire businesses, and end up where they are today. So, for example, a Vodafone, which is one of the largest companies that we have on the market, it didn't start there. But where we see that, addressing your point about there's a lot of support for startups, and there's a lot of support at sort of the larger end of the market when you're a significantly larger corporate. Certainly there is a bit of a gap, and hence why we developed AIM, which is our market for smaller growing companies, which was launched in 1995. So it has had its moments, but now we're certainly seeing that the companies that are accessing AIM are they're ambitious, they are growing companies, and they've got to a certain stage where they need to expand internationally, they need to raise their profile, not just with investors and analysts, but with the media, with their customers, with their suppliers. And actually the credibility of having a quote, being a public company, can certainly help companies access that growth.
Thank you, Lucy. I might respond a little bit to Mark's comments on sort of the challenges that face what we might call the old countries as such. But let me prep a couple of questions so that we can get our panellists ready to speak to them. So from just what we've talked, yes, sir. I'll take two here. Either or. Oh, three. Either three. Okay. All right. We'll ask it again. Yep.
Yes, sorry, I'm going to ask to Lucy. I'd like to know a little bit more about AIM. First, can you list on AIM if you're not a UK domiciled company, one? And two, what is the minimum requirements to be listed on AIM?
Since that's clarifying, do you want to just go for it, Lucy?
I'll answer it now. You don't have to be a UK PLC to quote on AIM. We have various companies incorporated all over the world quoted on the market. And because it is a growth market, we haven't actually specified any size threshold. So you don't need to, there is no minimum market capitalisation or market value. There's no revenue thresholds, and you certainly don't need to be profit making.
Thank you, Lucy.
And
Did you want to add something?
Is it the network question for slightly bigger companies? There's a couple of really great, particularly London-based networks, which I can recommend. There's something called the Tech London Advocates, which is a group of slightly older, grey-haired men and ladies who get together. I think there's no fee to join. It's just a generalised network, but you have to put something back into it as well, and they split into different kind of sectors. So I'm on both the advertising technology and the medical technology kind of working groups of the Tech London Advocates. It's a really great, interesting network in terms of the connections. And there's one other which is called Catalyst UK, which is a UKTI network. which again is primarily aimed at kind of promoting the whole of the UK, but it's the network of it is made up of people that are prepared to give a little bit of their time to do some of the mentoring that gentleman was asking about, and putting back into the UK. Quite well seasoned business people, and again a great network to be part of.
Thank you. Gosh, you're doing my job for me. That's fantastic. I'm going to take one question, then I'm going to just see if I can entice Mark into a bit more conversation on good old populations. Gentlemen, question from the floor? Yes, over here. Thank you, sir.
Hello. This is probably a question more for Lucy again. Yeah, companies have often moved to the U.S. to list. What is London doing in order to sort of change the balance and sort of get the pendulum to swing this way?
Lucy.
It's a very good question. And the world is increasingly a global place. And you will see that the companies that go to the US, or what the media thinks go to the US, are technology companies. And whereas London, as a financial centre, as a listing destination, we attract companies from more than just the technology sector. So we have technology companies quoting on our markets. So last year, we had 36 technology companies floating on our markets. Yes, the press have said that there have been some UK companies that have gone to the US, but no way as many as they perceive to have. We think that in London, and certainly London as a financial centre is attractive for, we've already mentioned sort of time zone, practicality of the language. Certainly we have a global pool of investors here. So whereas in the US you will be accessing, certainly in the public markets, a very domestic pool of investors, whereas going public here in London, you certainly access a much wider pool of investors. So you can actually access US investors from the UK with a London listing. And certainly last year, some of the larger IPOs that we saw, they were raising almost 50% of the money on IPO from actual US investors. So you can access European investors, obviously, and Asian investors. So that access to capital is pretty crucial. It also very much depends on the business, because some companies, they may be very US-centric in any case, and they may be headquartered here, for example, but actually they spend a lot of the time in the US in any case. So it very much depends on the business. But what we do see is that certainly with technology companies, they start small, they go to Silicon Valley, they get US investors, and then obviously the US investors turn them into US companies, and that's when we get this drain of companies and individuals as well, and talent leaving the UK. And we, the London Stock Exchange, we work very closely with the government and with Number 10 and the Treasury, and actually looking at how to retain innovative UK companies here in the UK. We do a lot with Tech City, and now we also have Joanna Shields, who's the previous CEO of Tech City, on our board as a non-executive director, to try and address this and try and provide this support to growing companies, innovative companies here in the UK. And we, the London Stock Exchange, will soon be launching a new initiative aimed at innovative, ambitious, growing companies. And it's going to be a sort of formal 2-year programme. And I can't say too much about it yet because we haven't officially launched it. But it is something to try and address this fact where we don't want companies to leave the UK, and we actually want to get the UK economy growing, which it is beginning to do, but actually build on that now.
Thank you, Lucy. If I can just sort of add to that. For my sins many years ago, when I first joined the civil service, I was assigned to the auditing and accounting team in the Department of Trade and Industry. Some of you may feel that was a bit of a graveyard sort of position for day one. But it was quite fascinating. And I was around at the time that Sarbanes-Oxley was coming in, and this is my link to you, sir, in terms of where do you list. There are different regulatory environments, governing companies in terms of boards, obviously auditing and accounting, though that can be international standards that sort of supersede on the domestics. But corporate governance, how you set up your boards, you know, how you work as a board together, roles of chairs and chief executives, directors' liabilities. All these things are extremely well regarded in this country. And a number of other countries look to the UK for what it's doing in terms of initiatives in this area. And they can be everywhere from the really hard stuff, KPIs, to perhaps what might be considered softer, more aspirational stuff in terms of representation and equity on boards. And as you sort of think about listing, you think about where you want to be in 5, 10, 15 years' time, I think it's well worth just pausing and thinking about what sort of regulatory environment will suit your business best. So not necessarily a plug for London, but definitely a plug for the UK, which I guess is appropriate given my title. I just wanted to pick on Mark's point, and then we'll take another couple of questions. I'm not sure what time we're at. This is a really interesting point about sort of North America and Europe and why growth therefore matters for us here. I think it's a dubious pleasure to become a country that will be pioneering the management of an aging population. But that is essentially what we are going to do. It's never been done before. This has never happened in the history of peoplekind or mankind. We will be amongst the first to do it, and it is a dubious pleasure. We're not alone. We're not alone in Europe. Our Central Eastern European colleagues are probably in a slightly worse place than we are in terms of aging ratios, etc. But we're certainly there with Western European colleagues. And actually there are pockets of Asia which also face the same problem, where there's a much higher kind of aging population than there is a working age population. I think what gives me some comfort in all of this is that amongst, for those of you who have seen a recent report, it's about 160 pages, so you can use it as a sort of, you know, door thing when you get home, in SED, which is the Global Competitiveness Index. It is worth a read, but then, you know, I'm a bit geeky about these things. But what really excites me is that in the sort of global talent race, putting aside sort of working age populations and ratios, the UK was rated as the only European country to which there will be talent migration over the next 12 years. And some other countries, our good colleagues in Germany, any Germans in the room, hello, Austrians, will be losing talent. So there is a net loss of talent coming from some countries in Western Europe, and there is a positive, a net gain in talent coming into the UK. And some of that will help, and that will complement our efforts, our government efforts, to stimulate growth and to maintain growth over the next 10 to 15 years. Definitely worth a read. Mark, did you want to... I hope I complimented and built rather than did anything else.
I agree with that. I mean, the worst demographics in the world are Japan and Germany. But there's a global race for capital now because we're in a single open world market. So we need to be globally competitive on 3 measures. One is making it a great country to locate a business, to choose to come here. Secondly, to grow a business, to invest in plant and equipment and real estate. And thirdly, to employ people, to generate jobs, and jobs for all, not just for the middle-aged, but in particular for the young. I just finished my Million Jobs campaign for young people, and we got NI lifted for anyone employed now under the age of 21. So I put all economic policy into these 3 buckets: global competition, corporate expansion, and job creation. And absolutely everything this country should do should fit into one of those 3. And if it doesn't fit, it doesn't count. We actually have in BIS, the Department for Industry, 831 different initiatives to expand companies and to try and grow businesses. It's completely unintelligible. So my argument to government is also to make things simple, to get clear messages out about why this is a great place to invest in. If we can get our growth rate up a little bit, which we're doing and we're succeeding, then we will manage the decline of our population and how much they're going to have to be taken care of. I would just add that aging is not just a Western phenomena. The birth rate in Southeast Asia has dropped to 2.1 from 4.5 in 15 years. And there's a correlation, if you look at the Gapminder website in Stockholm, look at the correlation between health and wealth on a per capita basis. And it's proven now worldwide that with the growing healthiness of all populations everywhere, that we are going to see the greatest aging of society ever in the next 30 or 40 years. So all countries will be suffering from this. The advantage they have, the 110 other countries in the world, is they're supported by youth and the ability to work and the keenness to work. We're not supported by that because our immigration policies are quite closed and we're not having enough children. So if you extrapolate forward, and I'd be happy to share with you my speech to the Greek government 2 days ago on exactly this point, we have to get our growth rate up to 2.5% per annum on average, which is why the promotion of Britain as a global place to doing business is so essential, and why people like Bob Crow are such a disgrace.
So we should be saying, come to the UK and have babies. Is that
Yeah. Now, for those who don't know who Bob is, does anyone not know who Bob is? Does everyone know who Bob Crow is? Right, Mark, you better explain. And then I'm going to invite Andrew to say a few words in response.
He's a union leader, union of the London Underground.
So he's
on
behind
a
some of
30% vote, he has managed to paralyse the transport system. And I think it should be 50% or more. Just on the rule of law, global competition, if you have listened to Kofi Annan, he'll say 3 things about investing in a country. 1, the rule of law. 2, the presence of proper democracy, not fake democracy, which exists across half the world. And 3, the freedom of the press. And that's the opening gamut. And after that, you then get into global competition. And for those who are thinking of investing in Britain, we're wonderful on the first 3, even though freedom of the press has had a slightly dodgy ride the last couple of years. And we're very good on the latter.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm going to ask Andrew to respond a little bit about Mark's comments. But I'll take a couple of questions first, if I may, so that we can prep some people to give you some really good, high-value answers to it. Questions in the room? Yes, Henry? Yes, of course.
Thank you. More on growth and how startups can contribute to growth in the UK economy. In Norway, we have had, my company has had exponential growth the past years, but now we're expanded to London and feels a bit like a startup again. And we work with big companies like Opera Software, Norsk Hydro, and huge company, multinational, DNV, GL now. And we see that us cooperating with them also gives them not only our ideas or our contributions, but also they learn of how we work. We work in a much faster pace, in a much more efficient manner. And as Mark was saying, some of the problem is that we are too slow in general in the West or in the old world. So my question is, do you see any additions, or what's your take on how we can facilitate more interactions like this from startups to more large companies?
Okay, great. I think maybe David and Julia can probably speak well to that. I'll get one more question prepped and then we'll let Julia rip, and we mustn't forget Andrew is going to talk a little bit more about growth generally. Oh, I thought you were going to ask a question. Anybody got a question over here? No, you're being shy again. All right. Why don't we let Julia have a go and then Andrew, and that might stimulate a few more questions from there. Julia.
Yeah, so one of the sort of biggest reasons behind the fund that has been backed by Centrica is that we fundamentally believe that the energy system needs disruption. And that's not going to come from the organisation, because we've done things the same way for 200 years. And so changing culture requires disruption of thought, processes, ways of working, and people. And so by investing in entrepreneurs, that ability to speed up disruptive change within the energy sector, which is now a fundamental basic human need in the West, and no longer an option as it is in the developing world. We have to change fast, and that's going to come from entrepreneurs, and that's why we want to invest in entrepreneurs. that are taking disruptive business models to change societal problems, and energy is at the core of that. And so we intend to make this a great success and encourage other corporates to do the same. One of the reasons I come to these events is to encourage corporates and help demonstrate the case study and the value that is coming to the organisation. And so we absolutely want to work with entrepreneurs that have that difference of opinion, that difference of thought, and stimulate great discussion and debate.
And Julia, how do you, I mean, let's say Henry has come in. How do you kind of protect Henry from getting caught up in sort of the old ways of the business, or, you know, sort of a slightly risk-averse approach? How does someone like Henry bloom and flourish in that environment that you're talking about?
So the approach that we're taking is we're a separate legal entity from Centrica. We are creating new networks. So we are really working with the digital media industry. We have a collaboration with Wyra, who are an incubator in the digital space, to help stimulate that difference of thought. And we're also putting in that peer-to-peer support by having those discussions across entrepreneurs that are at startup as well as, you know, latter stages in their development, to help have those discussions. But where support is required to navigate some of the more fundamental basic things like the regulatory environment here in the UK, or how smart metering is working from a governmental level, that's where, you know, we can accelerate the entrepreneur to know those things. And so that's where we see the blending coming together.
Excellent. Thank you. Andrew, Mark gave us some lively points to discuss.
He did, and I'm going to add, but first I'm going to add a little bit to what Julia was saying. I think, you know, it's fantastic what Centrica is doing, and it's happening across, you know, all of the industries. In fact, you mentioned Telefonica, Wyra's funder. Nike, you know, building great things. I'm going to put a plug out for something that David Cameron announced just last week, which was the Great Business Exchange. There's a great website that you can go on, where a whole bunch of very large companies like Sainsbury's, Virgin, Unilever, IPG Media Brands, you know, 30 or 40 big organizations pledging to support early stage businesses and work with them, including the British government, you know, actually changing their procurement rules to make sure that they buy more from small and medium enterprises. And there's a couple of reasons for that, which comes back to Mark's point. The Kaufman report in the United States showed that all, or something like 95% of all new jobs generated in the United States will come from businesses that are less than 5 years old. So actually, jobs, in terms of if we're going to find employment for all the people that all of you are going to have children when you come here to the UK, that there needs to be entrepreneurs creating those new jobs, because the old established companies, the Shells, the Conocos, the General Electrics, are losing jobs. So there will be jobs there, but there will be no new jobs. All the new jobs in the economy will be formed by small, new startup companies. The other thing that the Kaufman report said was that next year, over 50% of the US GDP will be generated by businesses that didn't exist in the 1980s. So I just want to think about that. You know, all of the 50% of GDP will be formed by businesses that started in 1990 or later. So these are companies like, you know, Google and Apple, Microsoft, and some of those organizations that are now becoming the dominant players. And of course, that will only continue, and it's been recognized absolutely here in the UK, and particularly by the UK government, that the support and the stimulation both of British entrepreneurs and overseas entrepreneurs coming to the UK and growing here is incredibly important. So the programs
that you mentioned, some of the programs that you talked about, are getting great traction. I think one of the things we struggle with, if I'm honest, is British entrepreneurs don't have the hunger that a lot of the overseas entrepreneurs have when they come here to the UK. I see accelerators, and I don't know, Julie, you might have a comment on this. I see all of the accelerators overflowing with people from Croatia, from Latvia, from Riga. We've got a load of Jordanians coming in. It's fantastic to see that influx of overseas entrepreneurs and the hunger that they have to succeed and do well here in the UK. And I want to take some of that and instill it in some of the British entrepreneurs that we have so that we can continue to grow that group of people. But let me assure you, I think that the UK and the programs and the schemes and the mentoring and the support that exists here is second to none in terms of the way in which we want to support that small, growing entrepreneurial business. I'm really excited and proud to be part of it.
Thank you, Andrew. I moved countries when I was about 20, as my accent, which might be moving around a bit, may give me away. But I wanted to ask you whether you thought that overseas-based entrepreneurs that have come here have got all that kind of hunger. Is that just true of anybody who moves, wherever they go? Is it just something about if you're the kind of person that's prepared to pack up, move continents, move countries, go home, you are going to flourish everywhere, and you will have a different outlook on life than those who perhaps stay at home? Or do you think it's something more than that?
It's a huge thing to do, isn't it?
To
take your life and move yourself and your family and your children potentially and come to a different place. So I think maybe there is something there. I have to say, I think in the UK we've created a little bit of a strange culture, and it's part of a societal, cultural situation that's occurred probably in the last 70 years. Well, we've taught our children that what we need to do is go to school, get an education, get a job, have family, have children, send them to school so they get an education, and go and get a job in a bank or a factory or something like that. And I think over a few generations, that's had a detrimental effect on our entrepreneurial spirit. Britain is the home of entrepreneurs, and yet I was reading a report recently that fascinatingly, the biggest obstacle to anybody leaving a job and starting a business in the United States is the fact that they don't know how they're going to pay their health care. Here in the UK, we don't have that problem. Everybody has pretty much free education and pretty much free health care. And yet we're still not starting as many new businesses per capita as the United States. So I think we've got a job of work to do to make sure that our people are more entrepreneurial than they perhaps are.
Can I just make a comment?
Of course.
No, I agree completely. The Chancellor and others launched the Year of Code 2 days ago, encouraging children to write code over the next year. I think our deficiency in arithmetic, maths, computer science, number of children who are taking computer science for A-level has dropped by 70% in the past 5 years. So the key to this also, not putting the positive slant on it, but being the skeptic for a second, is we need to invest substantially in education and technology and innovation, and also business training. For those new to the UK here, we're not that good. I go to, for example, the University of East London and meet many children who are thinking about getting a job and going to work, and the training that we give in this country to prepare for a job, to prepare for work is terrible. So not knowing how to stand up, how to shake hands, how to look people in the eye, how to debate. So all of that we can improve, but I think we're very good at this in terms of changing things. So this multicultural, highly dynamic, innovative society is perfect for Britain. So if you're thinking of coming here, definitely come, and everything will be fine.
Well, I'm glad he said that at the end. I was getting so depressed.
Everything will be fine.
There's a gentleman there. So, yes, give us your question, sir.
It's not so much a question, just to chip in on the conversation there. I mean, I've read many articles on sort of the psychology of entrepreneurs, and in some sense, kind of, I think society in developed world promotes security, financial security, and encourages sort of home ownership and all these things. And even the educational system is promoting the high marks in school. And then if you look at the other angle, that say, sort of the C grade students will be employing the A grade students, because the A grade students are afraid to fail, will not take risks, where the people that fail in the educational system are the people who flourish in the world because they don't mind failing. They don't want to fail, but they're not afraid to try. And I think that there's a whole mix of things, and the educational system as it stands is pushing high grades. It's pushing stability, no creativity, and we're all boxes coming out of the educational system if all the perfect teachers have their way, we'll say.
Yeah, that's right.
Can I jump in on it for a second? I think it's a really good point, because the organisation I work for, their motto in many ways is learn by doing. So giving entrepreneurs the opportunity to go out and fail and learn from that and then build up again. That entrepreneurial spirit, I feel, is lacking in many regards. Within schools, within universities, passed down to students. And they're not given the opportunity, they're not given the environment to do that. There's too much encouragement, building on your point, to go to the top 5 accounting firms or a consultancy or a bank. There's not enough support or risk-taking or that ability to recognise failure and learn from failure. I think that's a huge element.
Thank you.
And I think just building on your point, David, from a corporate standpoint, we don't allow people to fail either. And so actually, we need to have that blending of cross-sector partnerships with entrepreneurs, corporates, government, and education to help alleviate some of the risk adversity and building that self-belief in going out and building businesses. So lots that you can bring to help.
But I've seen in Ireland, right, we have a UKTI equivalent in Enterprise Ireland, and very supportive of businesses. And again, the argument there for support organisations is they support projects, and when a project fails, they almost write off the promoter in that context. In reality, if they continue to support the promoter from one project to the next project, and really they're investing in developing the people moving forward. And I don't know if they look at it in that way and measure it that way. They're too busy measuring it in, yes, that project was a success or not a success, rather than developing the people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, this idea of, and again, I'm afraid it's a bit of a British cultural thing, and I know we're not the only country that has it. There are a lot of other countries that have the same adverse reaction to failure. Whereas, it's something that's really important in terms of a learning process, and we need to embrace it a little bit more.
Thank you. And I don't think anyone would challenge the panel on these things. But since some of you have not come, and you may be sort of thinking, whoops, just the thing to kind of balance all of this is that what we do have is enormous commitment from government at the central level, at the local level, amongst representative groups, be they sort of quasi-government, if I'm allowed to call you a quasi-government person, David, myself, government, from all the way down, and this is being devolved into the sort of the local areas. There is enormous commitment and recognition that this is a kind of culture that we want to move to. So we might be a point or two behind at present, but we want to move to it. And I personally don't think there can be a greater demonstration of that. The fact that we are completely open to bringing in entrepreneurial people like you, Henry, like others, gentlemen over here, and not only bringing them in, attracting them in, but the minute you're here, you get exactly the same benefits, and I don't mean welfare ones, but the same benefits in terms of funding, grants, networks, access as any British-based business that's been here since 1066 when the French took us over. So, that is a big commitment, and it's a very visible and tangible demonstration, I think, of what makes this a great growth place. And you may have a few slow colleagues at present, but let's hope you don't have too many slow colleagues in future. So I think what the panelists are saying is really important. We know where our strengths are, we know where we're a bit behind, we're willing to learn, and this is a great place in which to do that. We are very close to that mojito or cocktail that's out there somewhere, aren't we, David? So I'm going to take one more question, if I may. So you have had 2 or 3. Can I just check if there's anyone in the room who hasn't had a chance? and then I'd be delighted to take it, since your questions have been of such great quality. Okay, we'll take the gentleman in the centre. Maybe if the panel can think about your sort of last 2 words to encourage our investors and to think positively about us, and then we'll wrap up if that suits you, David.
Thank you. It's referring to your last statement that you said, and as somebody coming from abroad who's going to come and invest in the UK and set up in the UK, would what you mentioned change when the government changes? I mean, is this, I know currently the government is pushing towards this, and it seems like a national agenda item to open up the country and bring investors and investments, but how, I mean, would this change in the future? Could this change in case the government changes in the next elections, or something happens and then the government decides this is not in the best interest of Britain, let's say? Just...
I'm going to give you such a bland answer, it's not worth me answering, because I am a civil servant working for the government, and therefore I'm very, very tight on what I'm allowed to say. But I think you would find completely across the board partisan support for, you know, the UK economy, UK welfare, and the sort of growth aspirations that we have. After that, it's all politics, if I may say so and be so bold. Some things move on the dial on immigration. We all know that. It's true in every single country. We're going through our politics. There's other countries. Oh, 5 minutes. I've got a smiley voice. I've got a smiley. Come on, show the smiley face you showed me. See? Oh, and I got a grumpy one. Time over. Politics moves around. You know, governments move around. But I think you will find there is across-the-board support for what we're attempting to do in the big macro picture, which is what you guys really care about over the next 2 to 3 years, building on what we've already got. So I'm going to get that nasty face.
Can I answer
there.
that question quickly?
I'm going to, as I said, Mark, we'll go for 2 minutes across everybody, and then we'll wrap
I think
up.
it's a great question. Just on London, I think if the Conservative mayor is replaced by a Labour mayor, I think we're fine, because London is a dynamic place, and all mayoral candidates, I think, believe in the attraction of enterprise. At a national level, in a world which is so open and so networked, and so many investments are so big, such as in the energy industry, we need to look a long term forward. And any remark by an opposition party about changing certainty or tax rates, I think is not stabilizing. So I'm a little bit worried about a Labour government. There have been some remarks recently, and they're not helpful, about tax rates. The environment we got at the moment over non-dom, the corporation tax rate and the capital gains tax rate, and things like EIS schemes, all key for bringing business to London or to Britain, are all perfect, and I don't think actually they would change very much. So we're on track to go to 20% corporation tax rate. I don't think that'll change. And capital gains tax is 28. If anything, it'll stay there or even drop a little bit. So I think the big macro indicators on locating a big business here will be fine under any government.
Thank you, Mark. Julia. Sorry. Sorry? Yes? We really are going to get this nasty face in a minute, but go for it, sir.
I think it's very bad to focus on tax competition. I think what you really should sell is the optimistic point of view. Why do people want to live in London? Why do they want to create their life here? And tax competition, you will have it all the time anywhere. I'm not interested in tax rates. I'm interested in having a good life.
Thank you. Well said. Thank you. Well said, sir. Julia.
So I'll answer that question. I lived in Houston for 4 years until last July, and I chose to come back to London because of the vibrancy of the economy, the willingness to try new things, the desire to become the central point, and the ability as an individual to really make a difference in society. And I think that any entrepreneur that is thinking about where to locate themselves won't find a better home that can do all of those things than anywhere else. The only thing I miss is the weather.
Yeah. Andrew.
I couldn't agree more, Martin. I've never met an entrepreneur that's been worried about the income tax rates. But they do, worry about the corporation tax and potential capital gains and all those kinds of things. And I think those underlying things, regardless of political party, will continue. In fact, I started my UKTI career under a Labour minister who said, we want to make sure we encourage more overseas entrepreneurs to come to the UK, and I think that will continue regardless. And I also couldn't agree more that if you're thinking about growing a business and taking it international from and you happen to be based not in the UK is one of the best places anywhere in the world to grow a business and take it international. And I couldn't agree more. It's certainly one of the best places in the world, and I've travelled quite a lot to live and work. And all of the overseas entrepreneurs that I see coming here are absolutely blown away by not just the support of the government, but the environment that exists here in the UK. It's very collaborative, it's multinational, it's incredibly liberal, it's very supportive, and our trading links with overseas countries, if you want to export overseas, are really second to none. I would like to change the weather a little bit, but apart from that, the tea's great, the beer's great, the talent is amazing, it's the best place to live and work. So come and work here and let's all have a good time down the pub.
Thank you, Andrew. Lucy, try and top that.
Yeah, I'm going to struggle, I think. I'd echo everything that Andrew's just said. I think London is a great place to live and work, but it's not just London. Certainly, companies that we see coming to the London Stock Exchange, they're from all over the UK, all over the world. So London really is at the heart of the world, and we need to just make people aware that London can get even bigger and better.
David.
And finally, I speak from the perspective of social entrepreneurship and social enterprise, but I think what London does offer is that support at every stage of an entrepreneur's journey, right from startup all the way through to scaling up to investment. I think that exists within London, and it's developing as we go along as well.
I'm definitely getting the face. So, panellists, first and foremost, can I ask the audience if they would take a round of applause for them coming out in this miserable weather, which is the only weakness of our entire country, but also for giving us so many insights and thoughts today. Round of applause. Well done. I also want to thank David and his team for inviting you, putting you on. I hope you've had an absolute great day. I'm forbidden from saying London is brilliant because, of course, I work for the United Kingdom, of which there are 4 kingdoms. But nonetheless, I do remember. I think that's probably it. Is it cocktails?
Not quite.
Not quite. OK. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Kate. Thank you, panellists. Thank you also for your honesty and objectiveness, because what we did promise you, and I mentioned it earlier, was that the role of London and Partners is to be a critical friend. As you assess your expansion plans and assess how you want to grow your business, what we always say is we will work with you alongside your business drivers to help you make better informed decisions. We'll be as objective as we possibly can. The last thing we want to do, as the panellists have said, is give you advice that leads you down the wrong path and makes you take wrong decisions that are not right for your business. So about being objective and about being critical is something that we pride ourselves on. I must also say that there's one or two firsts for me. I've never heard Bob Crow and Kofi Annan mentioned in the same breath, let alone the same sentence, so that's a first to me. We also promised you that the conference would be interactive, and so Andrew's saying come to the UK and have babies is a demonstration of our commitment to that. What we also said about the conference was there would be an opportunity for our investors to showcase themselves. You've seen our investors on the panel, and you've had a chance to interact with them, and they'll be out there this evening for you to talk to. We said we'd encourage our ecosystem, so our network of people, to work collaboratively with you, and we wanted to line people up that can help you on your journey to better decision making. And we also said that we try and equip you with the information to enable you to invest, to enable you to grow, to enable you to expand. And I hope we've managed to do that through the Game Changers panel, the Building the Client Base panel, the Hitting the Ground Running panel, and of course Growth Matters. panel. One thing that I'd like to mention, I've put the slide up behind me, is that we will do this again in a year's time, and we will let you know when it is, but please save the date. We're looking at the 29th of January 2015. We've written a guide with the help of our commercial partners, many of whom you've met today, about how to set up your business in London. The reason we say London, because as the panel has said, it is the best place in the world to set up a business and from which to grow a business. But of course we do want you to grow your business across the UK as well as across Europe, before Kate's stare burns through my right cheek. There's also a feedback form on your tables. Please fill it in, because when we come to next year's conference, we would like to know what you liked most about today and what you found most useful. We wanted it to be about you, the client, not us lecturing you about what we think you should be doing or what we think you want to know, but about what you have told us you wanted to know about, and enabling the panels to listen and answer the questions that you wanted to put to them. So please use the feedback form. For those partners of ours listed behind me, I want to say again, thank you very much indeed. When we talk about growing businesses in London and across the UK, there are many of our partners and chambers in the audience that can help you to do that, and are ready-made audiences for conversations about business and how to grow your business. I'd also want to thank Octopus, and the reason I'm mentioning it now is because the live streaming is about to stop after I've made my Bob Crow Kofi Annan joke. I'm sure I'll be trending across Twitter any moment. So goodbye to all those watching our live streaming, and thank you again to Octopus for setting that up for us. Thank you, of course, to Bloomberg for giving us the opportunity to come here, providing these great facilities and enabling us to hold our conference. And also thank you very much to my team, and of Carolina, particularly Morrisina, also to Eli and the rest of the EMEA team, who have spent time and invested a lot of effort in putting the conference on, because we wanted it to serve your needs. What about the EMEA region? It's a very diverse region. There are 26 countries represented today just in our audience. So trying to meet your needs is not straightforward, but I hope that you agree that we've done as good a job as we possibly could. You heard from Gerard Lyons this morning, the Mayor's Chief Economic Advisor. We've now got, in about 20 minutes' time, the Deputy Mayor for Business and Enterprise coming to talk to you over drinks. Kit Malthouse, as well as being the Deputy Mayor, is also the Chairman of London and Partners. And I was going to use some of his gags, but now that the live streaming is off, I'll wait for him to come so that he can use all his own gags. So the only thing really for me to say is we're going to wrap up now on the formal panel sessions. Thank you very much indeed for your attention. Thank you for being active. Thank you for asking questions and taking part. You get out of it what you put in. We've got a lot out of today just hearing from you. I hope that it's the same from your perspective. We want to do our best to help you to grow, whether that's in London or across the UK and Europe, and we will always put you first in every interaction that we have with you. So mojitos are calling. Thank you very much indeed. Kit will be with us in about 20 minutes, but please give yourself a round of applause, and then on us, please have a drink. Thank you very much.